do the What's up, guys? Welcome to the CSL podcast with Coach Fury, Chris from Portland. We got Brett from Dallas and Gary from Washington. Gary, how you doing today, man?
Pretty good, man. Same old, same old.
You've been talking about podcasting long enough. It's about time you finally got on one.
I told you, man. 4:30 Central Time. I'm here.
Finally out of your prison there.
Yeah, the slavery.
Um, yeah, and then Brett down in Florida. You're pretty excited about Florida State.
We're gonna lose in the first round of the basketball tourney here, but that's okay. We're fine.
And
We're just glad to be in it.
Your team is going to come up later. How you feeling? Feeling pretty good about that?
No, not anymore.
And Chris, your Portland team has been, the surprise of the year. You thinking like you might need to make a move now, or are you good sitting pat?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens with all of these deals. There's a lot of moving parts, but certainly looking at what options are available to us to try and keep up with the chaos that has happened over the past 3 days.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the league has kind of had an entire shakeup over the past few days. Would you guys feel confident saying the same thing?
Definitely.
Yep.
Yep, absolutely.
We won't get to the earthquake level deals yet. We'll start with the little tremors, as you can see here with the Kings Hawks deal. This one, Atlanta sent out their future first round pick, top 10 protected, got back Kings first round this year, plus Josh Davis, a rebounding specialist. Gary, the Hawks are in your division, and they've come in and kind of already made a number of trades. How do you feel about this one?
See, for the previous trades, I thought they were pretty good, but this one, I'm a little iffy just because they still have a long-term project. It's always risky giving out a first-round pick for a perennial loser like myself. I know, so you always think you'll make the playoffs, but then things just don't fall into place. And even though the pick is top 10 protected, but I don't know if the Hawks can turn it around in like 3 to 4 years. Like, it's a pretty rough mess. So I don't know. I don't really like it personally. I think Josh Davis is more of just a rebounder, like a mini Tyler Stone, with slightly better defense, but he's not really that efficient on offense either. So,
Brett, what are your thoughts?
My concern of it is that, like you're saying, is Josh Davis is essentially a bench player. He's never going to be a starter on a contending or playoff level team. So to deal a potential lottery pick, as we don't know where it's going to go, it's just a lot to give, and a very shrewd move by PD to get this done.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think the biggest thing for me here is someone who is literally came into the when I joined the Nuggets, I was in a very similar position to what Atlanta has just put himself into now. I was missing a future first rounder, and even though you have plenty of time before that first round pick comes up, sometimes you realize that that's the pick that you need, and then all of a sudden you're delayed a whole year because you didn't have the pick that you really needed. Now the top 10 protection pushes that back to 2024, but I mean that's a long time, and anything obviously that could be a number one pick that they're giving away. Who knows? I don't know if there's really much else to say here. Sacramento's always had players who they couldn't get playing time for. One of those small deals that we'll see in a couple years exactly how bad of a trade this really is. What, Chris, for you, what would make this deal? What pick would this need to be for Atlanta to have won this deal?
So I would, looking at this, two things to this really for me. So the first one is, to answer your question, is that pick probably needs to be around 23 plus to make it an acceptable trade. I mean, I don't value Josh Davis. I don't think he brings anything, and it's a bit of an odd move. Disappointed in the fact that I was sort of saying in the chat and the boards that the Hawks GM is an experienced GM. I mean, I've seen him in other leagues and I've seen him be very successful in other leagues. So I was a bit disappointed he made this move, really. But for me, I'm just interested to hear what your thoughts are, really. All of you guys, really. I mean, are you surprised this got through the the trade union really that we have in the league for new GMs. For me, I was surprised this one even got approved.
I'll just say that I think the thing about the trade union is until you can show the league that you're someone who we can trust and respect to make trades, then once you show that, then we can kind of go ahead and kind of give you a little bit more. I don't know, like for me, I give this person a little bit more respect now than I did when he joined the league because he's already shown that he can make good trades. Whereas like some other people who joined the league and there's no track record at all, or like also I've known this guy in another league and he's a really good, really active owner in that league. I just think that he's already earned that leeway. Any other GM makes this trade, we don't bat an eye because they've been around for a while. I think Atlanta very quickly earned that level of respect.
Agreed.
If this was the first trade that he made, yeah, I highly doubt that this gets approved. But after all the other trades he's made, I think we all can see that he can make these kinds of trades, and we don't have to babysit him.
Yep. But man, the Kings looks like from their picks history, it looks like they've been doing this for like years now. They always have picks in the future somehow. So I guess this is how they do it.
This is out of the BT playbook rule number 1, isn't it, for new general managers? As soon as they come in, he has this way of trading guys who, I mean, Josh Davis, he's not a terrible player. I'm not sitting here saying he's an absolute scrub, but I'm sitting here saying that he's a guy who's not worth a first-round pick. And he's managed to flip him to a new general manager. Yes, he may be an experienced general manager, but it's something the Kings have done time and time again, as Gary said. And fair play to them. They seem to always get away with it. But for me, I seriously question the trade union whether they were doing the correct job here.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I think if this was the first trade, it would have been scrutinized a lot more heavily. Let's move on to the next Kings trade because they made 2 of them. This one with the Clippers. This one, I mean, it's just one of those, the pick swap, the prospect, or I guess not even prospect swap, the role player swap. Brett, do I remember correctly? Were you the one that kind of spoke out and said you didn't like this deal for the Clippers?
No, I think it's a horrible deal. I think Booker's one of, I can't say he's overrated because I don't think a lot of people like him, but he's one of those players that's never going to be efficient. He has never been efficient. And so trading another potential top 15 draft pick for a guy that shouldn't be a top 8 rotation player is just a horrible deal.
Yeah, those shooting percentage really kind of hammer that home. I didn't realize it was that bad. I knew that that he hadn't shown a whole bunch, but that was the last time I checked in on him was when he was playing with Phoenix. Gary, does that look like the player card of someone you want to trade for?
No, because like Brett said, he's very, very inefficient. Like all the years, even under like good managers, like Phoenix gave up on him. Sacramento gave up on him now. Yesterday, who has good track record of turning guys around, also gave up on him. So that tells me that this guy's probably going to be impossible to fix. So I think this is a bad deal for the Clippers. And he's also going to be a free agent. Granted, he has restricted free agency, but the Clippers are already approaching hard cap status, so it's going to be a difficult situation keeping this kid.
This is one of those trades where I think that the trade would look different if pick swaps were allowed the way that they are in the NBA. I completely understand for a number of reasons why getting more complicated with trade rules is not something that we want to get into, but it seemed like the reason they traded those picks is because Booker has more value than Moreland, I guess. And so, Sacramento wanted the better pick of the two. I think this is one of those where it wouldn't have been so bad if they just did a pick swap. Because then if the Clippers end up somehow being better than the Kings next year, then they didn't really lose anything. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is one of those trades I think we can kind of move on from because it's not a whole lot. Clippers moved down in the draft probably about 10 spots. They get a guy. Kings get a guy. I don't think any of these guys are going to make any kind of impact.
Miles, just to jump in here, this is another really good example of why the Kings have been a good franchise in the West for so long. is they make moves like this that kind of go under the radar, and we'll see that Clippers pick could end up being lottery next year's pick, isn't it? Could end up being lottery next year. So they make small, tiny moves like this where guys who don't fit their roster, who aren't getting minutes, they seem to flip them just for future assets, and they'll turn that into something else. We've seen it time and time again. So guys, whoever's watching this podcast, take note. This is why some of the general managers in the league are at the top of the league, is because they make clever moves like this.
Yeah,
it's a zero risk, super high reward. Sorry.
No. You're absolutely right. I think this is one of those moves where, I don't think that they're doing anything wrong. It's just a testament to, like you said, Chris, why some of these top teams are always on the top, because, they can make these kind of moves that are a little bit more long-term view while being, while being in a playoff race, while being in the hunt to try to be the best team. They just watch the Mavericks and the Warriors and all these teams around them, get better. And, neither of these moves are going to help them this year, but they will help them next year and the year after that. And that's the kind of thing that's where the genius kind of comes into play.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So that's is that the last of the small deals? Do we have any more small deals?
One more.
Oh yeah. This is a fun one. Drummer has been looking for a wing for God knows how long. I think it's been like 2 or 3 seasons now. He's been looking for a shooting guard to put in that starting lineup. Chris, do you think they finally settled on the right guy here?
I think it's a move that, as you mentioned, Drummer's been trying to make for a long period of time. I'm a big fan of Spanoulis. I think he wasn't really given a fair crack of the whip in Houston. So, I mean, does it make Cleveland jump ahead in the East? I mean, judging by some of the deals we've seen, and we'll talk about later, possibly may have done actually. But when they initially made this trade, I didn't necessarily think so. I think it'll work out okay. Spanoulis will instantly give them some sort of offense. He's ready now to play. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he does, providing he gets a decent set of minutes. So all in all, smart move for Cleveland. Gives them a little bit of a nudge, but not necessarily the big jump they need, really.
Gary, this is a team that you might face in the playoffs. I mean, I don't know exactly where you guys are seated right now, but I know you're both in the playoffs. Do you think Spanoulis is the guy that they should have gone after?
It's hard to say because I feel like that kind of player is very similar to Maldo Low. So I guess what they're going to do is stagger their minutes possibly for constant offense. Because I always thought that Drummond was trying to look for like a better 3-and-D defender to pair up with Kyrie and Blake. But I guess he couldn't find a deal that he liked, so he had to settle on Spanoulis, who I think was even a late first-round pick, I believe. And I guess I felt that he's worth it. So, I mean, Spanoulis is a solid player. He's got some secondary playmaking. Seems like a good scorer, but he doesn't really provide a defense that he's looking for. But hey, I guess when there's nothing else out there, you got to settle for what you can get.
Yeah, it surprised me too, just because, like you were just saying, they were looking for supposedly looking for defense, and I don't think they really got that. I think they got more offense, which I think is the last thing that Cleveland needs. But if he can hold down that shooting guard spot, that they haven't had anyone do that, so maybe it works out for them. Brett, can you go back to the trade screen, Chris?
Sure.
Brett, do you think that Houston did better here getting that future first from Cleveland, or Oklahoma City did better by sending nothing, getting the protection released, and getting 2 second-round picks out of it?
Houston did a lot better because their first-round pick actually has potential to be lottery by that time. I mean, Dwight's getting older. Cleveland's core isn't exactly getting any younger. The second-round picks are likely going to be worthless. I didn't think it was a good trade for Cleveland, and I thought it was a great trade for Houston, just picking up that asset, knowing how Cleveland will be in a couple of years and the issues they're going to have moving forward.
Yeah, and it's funny. We talked about how the Kings, they do such a great job and other teams like this, because while they're fighting to be the best team in the league, they are also able to take a longer view. This trade right here is reminiscent of something I used to do a lot when I was in the NLL with Charlotte, and that was, you think you're one piece away, one player away, and so you trade any asset you can, including your first round picks far out in the future, and after a while it adds up, and you realize that you haven't had any new young talent on the team in a while. You haven't had any, they got lucky with Mao Low. I should say they got lucky with how strong this last draft class was, but I feel like they're really going to be missing the potential for young talent in a few years when, as you said, they're going to be getting older and their window's going to be closing. But again, I mean, all in all, mostly a small trade. We'll know in a few years if Cleveland really, really regrets this deal. We'll also know by the end of this year, potentially, if Cleveland really likes this deal because, who knows? I mean, the East looks like Detroit's to lose, but we just saw Drummond go down, so anything can happen. So I guess we'll see. Do you think any of you guys think Cleveland has a chance at making it to the finals?
Not for me, no.
No, not enough defense. Defense wins, and they just keep trading for more offense.
Yeah, I don't think they can overcome Detroit's juggernaut run this year. I mean, Detroit looks sick this year. So.
Yeah. I think before they made this trade, they were praying for Detroit injury, and after the trade, they're still praying for Detroit injury. But that's enough of the small deals. That's a nice little fun stuff, but let's get into the really big stuff. Let's jump into like the really big stuff. Brett, do you want to talk about how this deal came to be, considering you're actually involved?
Well, it's been probably a 2-week process deal. I started this as an idea I had for almost since the season began, but I want to see how he played out. After our recent loss to Sacramento, I shot Willie a message saying I was interested in Paul George and gave an offer of Jonathan Simmons and Harden for George. But Willie expressed his desire to go into a different direction, and he had particular players in mind. And it just, after a few days trying to find out what players he wanted to go to, I started messaging 4 or 5 different teams and seeing what I could work out. He wanted, I guess I probably shouldn't mention every player he wanted, but Embiid was a player under consideration. He wanted Dunn, Wiggins, and Drummond, if possible. As you saw, he just acquired Drummond in another trade. And surprisingly, he wanted Wiggins over Dunn, but everyone has their own player evaluations and everything. But so it was just a long 16 hours of negotiations come Sunday trying to get this hammered out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely did not seem like something that would have been super easy to put together. Trades like these never are. Let me ask you, so you obviously traded away James Harden, received Paul George, but you also swapped first rounders in this. I get the feeling, based on how you've talked about James Harden, that you would have made a trade of James Harden for Paul George straight up if you had that opportunity to. Yes. Am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, that's probably accurate. I thought our defense needed to improve. I mean, Harden's defensive metrics have been actually outstanding this year. I think he's above 90% stop, and he's like in the top 10 for steals. And his defensive metrics are actually better than Paul George's currently. But I think Paul George just fits our system a little better. He's another three-point shooter, and just rating-wise, I just think he'll fit a lot better and hopefully helping stop Westbrook and now this rookie Taylor out of Phoenix and 2 players we've struggled with so far this year. So,
yeah, I mean I think the deal makes a lot of sense for you guys as well. I just wanted to touch on the pick swap on top of that. So, Gary, this trade also affects you because Charlotte, a team that looked dead in the water a month ago, now just got Chris Dunn. I think everyone has pretty much universally agreed that we all like Chris Dunn more than we like Andrew Wiggins. Are you nervous at all about Charlotte now?
I mean, it's a good start, but I feel like they still got a long way to go because they still have a lot of young guys on the team that's going to take a while to develop. So I like Dunn a lot, but I'm not sure he's going to be the number 1 guy. I see him more as like a number 2 guy. he's done growing.
So you're saying when he's done growing, he'll be a number 2?
Yep. I feel like this team needs guys. So.
Yeah. I mean, this trade. You can look at it from every single team's perspective, and it's absolutely wild. It's a true 4-team blockbuster because I think each team on their individual sends away and receives is, blockbuster status. Chris, who do you think did the best in this deal?
On just this deal alone, or on the whole?
Just this deal alone, because we'll touch for a few of these teams. We're gonna get to kind of the whole picture for them. Let's just looking at this deal.
So for me, the team that's done the best in this deal, unfortunately, I have to say, even though he's on this podcast, is Orlando. I think, as Brett mentioned, James Harden probably wasn't necessarily the best fit. It was a collection of another talented player that they acquired originally. When you look at Paul George for Orlando, it's a much better fit. He's someone who can play a couple of positions for them. It probably means that they have a guy who can make an impact on both ends of the floor in those positions as well, not necessarily being outclassed. I know Harden's been played at every position imaginable in this league, but sometimes he might be a bit suspect there. So Orlando for me. But
so you're saying Dallas won the deal?
Sorry? Oh, sorry, not Orlando, Dallas. I'm looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, sorry, Dallas. God, going in my head, Orlando. Yeah, Dallas, absolutely. Just want to touch on Golden State, though, because I know we'll talk about them a lot later, but it's nice to see a team that goes out of their way to acquire a star and is not happy with just settling for being a middle-of-the-pack team, which I think Golden State were leaning towards as well.
Yeah, Golden State, I mean, for me, I think the winner here is Golden State. I know they gave up a lot. I mean, they gave up a first-round pick, they gave up Embiid, they gave up Dunn, they gave up a lot. But you got to give up a lot to get a guy that everyone can agree on as a top 5 player in the league. Even though he's not the monster that he was when he single-handedly won Houston the title, he's still very, very, very good. And it's not easy to acquire, even in this trade-happy league. It's not necessarily easy to acquire those kinds of guys. Brett, I'll omit you from this because I know you feel strongest probably about your own team. Well, actually, let me ask you, do you feel any of the other teams did better than you did in this trade?
I think a lot of teams did equal. I think it was a great deal for Golden State. I mean, I think he actually gave up less than I made his offer too, Jeff, for it. But it's basically maybe slightly less than I gave up to get Harden last year. Essentially, the whole deal was Harden for Dunn and Embiid in a first-round pick. And then I was trading Dunn for Wiggins. And before this to work cap-wise, someone had to take Taj Gibson, and I couldn't because I'm over the hard cap. Jeff had his own issues working around for these trades, and only one that could have was Charlotte. And so I had to pay Charlotte my first-round pick just to
take on Gibson.
Take on Gibson. And I would rather have had Jeff's pick personally than my own pick, just because I didn't know this other trade was happening. But yeah, I think everyone didn't. I think all three. I mean, God, I'm not a big fan of it on Orlando's end, but I think Charlotte kind of revitalized their franchise with this trade. I think Dunn will be a number 1 type player, a future top 10, 15 player in this league, and can't fault Golden State. He's been trying forever to consolidate and have this opportunity to get a top 5 player.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, everyone did really well. I think even when we're talking about Orlando not doing that well, I think we're still almost nitpicking, just because we know they could have had Dunn instead of having Wiggins, and I still think if we had never known that Orlando could have had Dunn and that they just got Wiggins and Embiid, I think the conversation we'd be having about Orlando and this deal would have been a little different. But let's move on to Orlando's kind of more head scratching move. Even
Miles,
though from a
one very quick question to jump in again at you. So we mentioned obviously the hard cap issues that Dallas have faced for a millennium now and continue to face. And there were some questions that were raised in the chat around Is this something the league needs to revisit in terms of the hard cap penalties, in terms of what essentially Dallas have been able to do to bend the rules to allow them to facilitate trades like this? Do you think this is something the league needs to revisit in the summer at the commissioner level and think about? Is there something else they need to put in penalty-wise to prevent teams essentially copying the Dallas model?
I think, yeah, I don't know. I think it's very difficult to be able to get to the Dallas model. I don't think it's that easy to have a team that is organically over the hard cap. That is a very, very good team that you can continue to operate over the hard cap. It takes a lot of almost like really minuscule, like detail-oriented ability to make sure you never dip under the hard cap in order to get the penalty again. And so I don't know. I mean, I think it's something worth talking about. I don't know what any penalty changes should be. I don't know how that might change to affect the league moving forward. I think it's worth talking about for sure. Just because when you have a hard cap of 90 and a team at 96, I think we all kind of thought a hard cap would keep a team close to the hard cap. Like if you ended up over the hard cap, you ended up over it by 1 million because you had 11 players and you're sitting at 89.9. I don't think anyone expected the team to be at 96, 95 plus. So, and that's just coming from when I was a commissioner, a few years ago. That was kind of our expectations when we created a hard cap rule. So, I don't really want to get too much into that just because that's, a discussion for people that are not on this podcast, and we'll see, what they think of it, I guess, this offseason. So, Orlando then went and traded away their first round pick for another injured player. I mean, let's throw out the first round picks for a second, because we all know how we feel about the first round picks. Gary's very exasperated side just now tells you how we all feel about the first round picks. Let's just talk talent. And Gary, we'll start with you. Cousins for Drummond. Who, just talent alone, who's the better player? Who wins that trade?
My opinion, I feel Drummond is the better player. I guess it depends on the injury hit, if there's going to be any rating decreases or not. But even then, Drummond is still one of the best centers in the league. And talent-wise, I feel Drummond is a better center than Cousins by far. But it's just that injury and the free agent situation that makes it sticky.
It does. Sticky is a good word for that. Brett, what do you think, Drummond or Cousins? Ignore the picks.
Oh, Drummond.
Chris?
Oh, absolutely. Drummond gets more wins than Cousins, hands down. Not even a discussion.
Is it fair to say that the main reason for that is the defensive difference between the two players? Or is it offense as well? Anyone can jump in on this. Offense as well?
Yep. Overall, it's just higher efficient player. Much better defensively, but offensively is even better.
Okay. And then, so now we talk about the picks. Obviously, with an Orlando team that's going to be missing Drummond for the entire rest of the season, that's going to be missing Wiggins for until there's about 10 games left in the season. Willie came out and said that he didn't think the pick swap was a big deal because he thinks he's still going to make the playoffs. Just on a scale of 1 to 10, each of you, what do you think? 10 being, yes, they're definitely going to make the playoffs. It doesn't matter what seed. They're going to be 8th seed or higher. 1 is there's not a chance they're going to sniff the playoffs. Where do you guys see the Magic's chance standing at right now? Anyone can jump in.
So did you say what 10 not going to make the
10
playoffs?
10 is definitely they're going to make the playoffs. 1 is definitely they're not going to make the playoffs.
I would put them at probably around about a conservative 6. I think a lot of that is determined on whether the Pacers get their act together and actually perform to their ability.
Okay, Brett.
I'm saying a 4 or 5. I mean, the East after the eight gets kind of weak down there. So anything can happen. Can they tread water until Wiggins gets healthy? Maybe. I need to see what their upcoming 15-game schedule is, but it's probably a 4 or 5.
Gary.
I give them a 4, I guess, because like I said, you're looking at their roster just really thin with these injured players. Just right now, let's see, their second best player would be what? Rondo at 33 years old, Rajon Rondo. I just don't see anything else that will help them propel them into playoffs. And let's be honest, like it really doesn't have the game either, I believe, so that will make it difficult for him to strategize for each important matchup. So that's another disadvantage that he has, in my opinion.
That's true. Willie sends in manual depth charts, so obviously that speaks to him not having the game. Now, all I said was, are they going to make the playoffs at all? The Raptors, now turning an injured Drummond into Cousins, probably still stand a chance of being a top 3 seed in the East, right?
Yep.
So even if Orlando makes the playoffs, you're still probably talking about a 10 pick drop in the draft. I mean, does that make sense to any of you guys?
I think it makes sense if Drummond resigns. If Drummond resigns and it's a 10 pick differential, we're arguing over, let's assume Orlando make the playoffs. We're not arguing over a lottery pick, we're arguing over middle to end of the draft. So he's probably looked at it and thought, I can flip Cousins here for an injured Drummond. If he comes back healthy and I re-sign him, then we're in really good shape. So I can absolutely see why Orlando have made the move. It's just a high-risk move.
So kind of similar to the Kings-Hawks trade. And I think we'll know in 2 years a little bit better which deal was worth it. So let's assume Drummond re-signs with the Magic. And let's assume that if he has a ratings drop, it's minimal, that he's still 95% the Drummond he's been for Toronto. What pick would the Magic have to be above in order to make this trade worth it? What's the lowest their pick could be in order for this trade to still be worth it? Brett, what do you think?
I mean, if they made the playoffs, the trade's probably worth it. Would I consider them to be winners of the trade still? I mean, I'd have to wait to see if Drummond has a rating decrease or not.
Yeah, I mean, win or loser, let's not focus on that. I mean, just thinking about from Orlando's perspective, if the trade was worth it for them,
They make the playoffs, it was probably worth it.
Gary, what do you think?
Yeah, if it make the playoffs, it'd be worth it. Like I said, Drummond's younger, and it's going to be more longevity than Cousins, and this is a better player. But then again, this is a second major injury, so he could be turned to one of those guys just gets hurt every other year. So that's another factor.
Chris, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think anything from if I was doing it in Orlando's situation, I would probably, and I had to pick what number it'd be anything from pick 13, 14 down. I would do for Drummond, providing he doesn't have a ratings hit.
Right. Well, if he has a ratings hit or if he doesn't resign, which are obviously two of the big question marks, it's a whole other deal at that point. At this point, Orlando needs Drummond to be 95% the same guy. They need him to resign, and they need to not get a top 10 pick or not, give away a top 10 pick this draft. I think those are the three.
It's a shame he moved Paul George and didn't just do this deal. If he just did this deal, we'd probably look at it and thinking, okay, this year they probably won't be a contender, but next year, providing they get some pieces around a fit Drummond and Paul George, that team's in good shape again.
It's not a bad point. All right, so I think we've had enough of Orlando. They've made some big moves, but we've talked about them enough. Finally, the last big team out of all this really is Golden State. Let's go to the other Golden State deal first. We'll end on this one. So this trade, I think, was one of the first trades that happened to kick off the crazy weekend of trading. Again, Gary, I'll start with you because the deal is in your division. Now the Hornets have Dunn and Korkmaz. Do you think? I mean, you said yourself you don't think Dunn can be number one. What do you think Korkmaz can be?
Korkmaz from my scouting at least, it looks like he can be a very solid glue guy, maybe a third to fourth option on a good team. He's a good all-around guy, but I'm just not sure how efficient he can be offensively because the shooting ratings didn't look too hot. So,
Right, you said that Korkmaz was your number 3 in that draft. It seems like you're the high guy on him. What do you like so much about him?
See, my shooting ratings on the guy. Sorry.
That's because I like the guy. I like to have, for my small forward position at least, from the wing position, I like to have guys that can do a little bit of everything. Like I said, especially I'm running a small ball lineup a lot of times, and I like to have guys that can have some secondary playmaking ability, can grab some boards, play some defense. Like I said, in DDS and this engine, I feel like point guard is the biggest scoring threat of all the good teams. So I feel like you're having a good glue guy that can play defense and do a little bit of everything in a small forward position would be perfect if you're a contender.
All right, and Brett, so you were the high guy on Korkmaz. What are your thoughts? Why are you so high on him?
Unless I got the high end, I scouted him a couple times, and I had pretty good shooting scouts for him. I mean, I saw his field goal I see in the 40s, low 40s, or the high 30s, and then a good field goal 3. And I see good defense by him, and he does everything well. I think he's just an excellent glue guy. Of a lot of the other players in the lottery, I'm just seeing a bunch of other role players as well. I just think every team needs a guy like this on their team, a good, solid number 3 player that can play any position technically. If you have an injury at point guard, he can fill in some minutes for you there. If you have an injury at shooting guard, small forward, just those versatile players are just underrated in this league, in my opinion.
Chris, what do you think? Which team do you think made the bigger impact here? Do you think Golden State has the bigger impact, or do you think Charlotte's got the bigger impact?
Golden State, absolutely. If you look at the other move they made and this move, they're obviously doubling down a little bit for the now rather than the future. But Favors is the best player in this deal. Charlotte obviously rebuilding a little bit, so again, I think you'll mention Miles in a minute, but this is one that we're going to probably talk about a couple of years down the line as to what impact this has had. But on face value now, Golden State wins this one for me.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, Chris, just because I think, especially in light of the other moves that have been made for Golden State, but I think that the thing for me is that no matter what Korkmaz turns into, obviously short of him turning into like a top 20 player, which I don't see happening personally, I think that the run that Golden State is now going to be able to make over the next couple seasons with Favors down low is going to be worth more, in my opinion. It would be worth more to me than the, role player, high end number 3 at best that Korkmaz will turn into. Again, if they didn't make all the other moves they're making, I would not think so highly of this deal. But you pair Favors with Harden, with this other guy they've got, I think it's a whole nother thing. And I think it makes a whole lot of sense for them. These are the moves that every team that has traded, I'll go ahead and say now, every team that has traded for Durant did not make these types of moves since he's been in Portland. Even Chicago didn't really pull it off as well as I think as Golden State's pulling off right now. And I think that's what you need to do. So I think this is the right move for them. And I think this is the right move for Charlotte. I just, I like it better for Golden State. So that's any thoughts on Capella? He's kind of the forgotten guy in this deal. Anyone feel strongly about Capella one way or the other?
He is a very forgettable guy.
All right, well, there you go. So
I think that's no.
He's a decent. He'll play for the Hornets. He's not an expiring, is he?
Next year he is, I believe.
Yeah, so he'll play some minutes down low for Charlotte. The other Hornets team. Yeah, I mean, he'll play some minutes for Charlotte. You gotta, you need guys like that to trade guys like Favors. Not a big deal. All right, let's get to the fun one, the big one, the one that just happened. I don't even know what to say about this right now. Let's start. Chris, you go first. First thoughts when you saw the trade?
I see. I feel we need to. I need to sit and write an article when I have some time this weekend about the Kevin Durant curse, because ever since I joined this league and I moved him from Portland, he seems to just be like this curse. Whoever acquires Kevin Durant, he doesn't last more than a few months there, and he gets traded for, I mean, less than his value when the team acquired him. I mean, Miles, do you think there's a curse with Kevin Durant now? In terms of he goes to a team and they just underperform when they just get frustrated and trade him again?
No, I don't think there's a curse of Kevin Durant at all. I think there's an impatience of Kevin Durant where people think Kevin Durant is who he used to be. They think he's the player that he was his first year in Portland or even before that. And I think it's clear that Kevin Durant isn't that guy anymore. And I think that's the problem is we all still value him like he is that guy. He's not going to single-handedly win you games. I think that's the mistake the Lakers made. They traded for Durant and thought, well, that's it. We're good. I don't need to make any other moves. Kevin Durant will win us 30 games by himself. The rest of my team will win another 10. We're going to be in the playoffs. Or whatever the math in their head was. And the truth of the matter is Kevin Durant's just not that guy.
That's exactly why I traded him. When he came back from injury, I was expecting him to be this guy who would lead us from what was an 8th seed to borderline 5th seed. I wasn't expecting a drastic change, but I think one of the things that teams have forgotten about him is that, yes, he's had a ratings drop and quite a severe ratings drop now, but he's also lost consistency. And people haven't picked that up because they haven't been watching the box scores of the games, but he'll score 35 a night and the next night he'll take 4 shots. And I don't know whether that's just a DDS thing or whether it's an injury thing or not, but he's not consistent in his impact in games anymore.
Brett, this Golden State team now, potentially threatens the, consensus top 3 in the West. At the beginning of the season, we all said it's going to be Phoenix, Sacramento, Dallas. Those are going to be the teams that you're going to see at the end of it all in the West. How are you feeling about Golden State? And obviously they got to show it on the court, but right now, how are you feeling about Golden State?
Well, touching on one thing real quick on Durant. You can't say it's just by himself either, though. If you look at Harden when he was with Houston, they tumbled. You see AD with New Orleans. Every star needs at least some more talent around them. They just can't. There's no star in this league that can do it by himself. Apparently, Harden didn't do it in Houston when they tumbled. AD's not doing New Orleans, so every player needs the right fit around them. But as far as New Orleans go, as far as Golden State goes, prior to or at the beginning of the season, I really wanted the first seed because, in my opinion, whoever was the first seed would basically get a bye in the first round and then a bye in the second round until they have to get their little whoever's left after the fight between the 2 and 3 seed. If it was me being number 1 seed, it would have been Sacramento or Phoenix, and I didn't want to have to face both of them. Now it's no game in the second round anymore because Golden State arguably might have the best starting 5 in the league. I could almost say it could be even better than mine. So it's no longer going to be easy street for us any longer, or whoever the number 1 seed is. You can't sleep on them at all.
Who's Golden State's 5th starter going to be? Because obviously it's going to be Payne, Harden, Durant, Favors.
I guess it would depend on how active Jeff gets with his submates, because I think it'll be more of a matchup fit, but I'm guessing it's going to be Ross.
And they'll start,
Terrence
what do you
Ross
think?
is my
They'll
guess.
start Durant at power forward and Favors at center?
Yeah, or put Durant sometimes at center, I'm assuming. I think it'll be a lot of matchups.
Yep.
Yeah, well, they'll have their hands full over the next few months figuring out what's going to be their best rotation heading into the playoffs, because as others have pointed out, they're a very top-heavy team now. And while they're not devoid of talent outside of their top 4, it's not exactly the deepest team. So they'll have a pretty similar situation to you moving forward, and we'll see if they figure it out in time. Gary, how do you feel about what Memphis got in return here? Like, if we're just talking about Memphis' side of it, do you think they did enough here?
Compared to what they gave up in Chris Middleton, no, I don't think he did. Like I said, Jay Crowder has always been a very highly valued 3-and-D guy, but he's not really a guy that's going to carry your franchise. And Brandon Dawson is solid. He can play some small forward, power forward, but it's not like anything special. And Harrison Barnes just a huge expiring. So, and Memphis also gave away their pick next year. I thought if they're doing this route, they should be going full rebuild, but then they traded away their first next year. So, I don't know. It's kind of like a mixed signal trade. It's like more like Andre's is getting frustrated with his team and just like, you know what? Screw it. I just want my Jay Crowder back. So, that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about the whole pick situation. I mean, obviously, I think that them losing their first round pick next year is not a great decision, but I also I don't know how I feel about that 2023 first round pick that Golden State gave up. Yes, they look great now. Yes, they look great probably moving forward, but like I said, I don't know about Kevin Durant anymore. Favors isn't exactly a spring chicken either. They're one injury away in 2023 from being like a bad team. I mean, that
are they though?
I mean, you said it yourself. Harden couldn't carry a team by himself. They're not going to be. I mean, we're not talking a lot. We're not talking a top 5 pick or anything like that. But there's a chance that this is a poor lottery pick in 2023.
I mean, they'll still have, and come 2023, they have Payne, who I think is very good. Memphis pick will likely be a lottery pick, so depending on if they want to trade it for a ready-now player or how good the draft is. And Favors won't be regressing at all by then either, so.
Yeah, I think that Memphis, I mean, I just looked at it. Memphis didn't need to give up that first-round pick. My first thought when I saw this trade was this is one of those deals where they had to give up a 2022 pick to get the 21 and 23, but they didn't need to. And I think if I was Memphis, I would have stuck tighter a little bit to the guns on not giving up a first-round pick and Kevin Durant in this trade.
Agreed.
But I mean, like you said, Gary, it kind of felt like they were fed up with the Durant experience. The explanation that we can see on screen here makes it seem like Andre is pretty done with the Durant experience. Chris, you've got firsthand knowledge of what that's like, and it didn't seem like you were all that happy with the Kevin Durant that you had. And I think if Andre was on here, he would agree with us that if he knew back then what he knows now, he probably wouldn't have made the trade for Durant at all. I think that he definitely in the aggregate lost when you're looking at like Middleton and Wood for the return he got. But at the end of the day, you got to have a team that you like and a team that you want to deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I can't blame him for that. Especially when we're, this would be a whole nother trade if we're talking about a GM who hasn't been around, like a DVDA, making this kind of trade and then leaving. That's a whole nother thing. I'm not worried about Andre, and for guys like him who have been around a long time, I'm all in favor of them making the types of trades that keep them interested.
My concern with this, Miles, though, is that this reminds me a lot of the Marcos trades that he made before he left. So Andre, if he's listening to this or does listen to this, you've got some players you like, but don't use this as a. Hopefully, this isn't a downward spiral for yourselves to jump out of the league.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the one difference between what the trades that Marcos made and the trade that Andre's making is that Chicago was left pretty much completely bare of assets in the future. It was kind of one of those situations where it was almost like what I had to take over. Whereas at least Memphis, they might be late first rounders, but they still have a pretty large stable of picks moving forward. So it's a little different, but I totally agree. I hope that this isn't Andre spiraling out, but I don't think it is. He's a solid guy.
No, that's so
I mean, so many trades have been made. Let's talk about overall picture, big winners. I will stall for a second while you all think about who your biggest winner of this trade weekend was. For me, I think the biggest winner of this trade weekend was Toronto. They lost a player for the whole rest of the season. There was not going to be any return for him, and they turned him into an impact player at the same position and a better first-round pick this draft. And I think that when Drummond went down, we all said, well, there goes Toronto's chance at a title. And I think they reopened their window right back up again with Cousins. So I think Toronto's the biggest winner for me. Brett, are you ready with your biggest winner of the trade deadline?
I think it still has to be Golden State to be a meddling, borderline playoff team to a true contender now. Any team that does that, I think it's got to be a huge win in my books. I can see Toronto, and I can see an argument for Charlotte being made also for regrouping that team also and getting a player like Dunn.
Gary, who's your biggest winner?
I gotta say Golden State for me, with Toronto slightly behind. I mean, Golden State literally has changed from like they said, a milling, selling, mediocre 500 team to getting two superstars now. Well, I guess Durant's more of a star, not a superstar now, but still, he's like a lethal number 2 guy right next to James Harden. That's like a dream combo that any GM would like to have in this league. And they still have some good supporting cast like Favors and Cameron Payne. So I thought Jeff did a very good job from a guy that has, don't even have a computer. Now he gets a computer, boom, deals gets done. Now he's a contender in the West.
Chris, biggest winner?
I have to agree, Golden State. I won't repeat everything Gary and Brett have said because they've said everything. But yeah, when you go from middle team to contender, you're certainly going to win a trade period or have had some successful trades.
Now, there is one thing that we haven't really talked about, and you guys, all three of you kind of touched on it, so I'll bring it up now then. You guys all mentioned Golden State as a middling team, and obviously that's what they are, literally, based on their record. But they are much better last Thursday, before all the trades, than they were, last season or the season before that. And Chris Dunn, a guy who we've all universally said is really good, and Cameron Payne and Joel Embiid and Jay Crowder, they had a young group of players, and Korkmaz because obviously, I mean, I agree that they're a huge winner too, but is there any downside here in that they just got a whole lot older?
Miles, you've mentioned some players there, and yeah, they're all talented players. My question back to you before you throw it out to us again is, those players, are they as a collective good enough to beat Phoenix and Dallas?
In 5 years, they might be. I mean,
really?
It's crazy. Look, it's crazy. I'm talking about this, obviously, but you got to mention the fact that this is a young team that was still getting better. But no, they were not going to be a championship team. So I'll leave that for that's not a discussion worth having. So Chris, who's your biggest loser of this weekend?
Oh well. I think everyone's going to say Orlando, mainly because they've acquired 2 guys who are injured and one who's expiring and may not necessarily be there next year. It's the obvious one. Yeah, that's the obvious one for me, I think, at the moment. If you move your best player and you get back a younger guy, normally it's a fairly good move, but I'm not convinced that Wiggins is the final answer that you would have wanted to replace Paul George with.
Gary, who's your biggest loser?
I'm going to be a little different and say Memphis Grizzlies. Sorry, Andre, love you, but like I said, just change the direction of downgrading from Durant into Jay Crowder and Brandon Dawson. Just very, very iffy. And you also give a first rounder for next year for a rebuilding team as well, so that's always risky. So I got to say Memphis.
Brett?
Yeah, I was going to say Memphis also. I think there's a few other young teams out there that may have had interest in Durant, or just for a simple fact, not putting your next year's first into the deal could have changed a lot of things too, especially if you're going through a blowing your team up like this. So definitely Memphis.
Yeah, I mean, if like we can't just sit here and say that for sure Golden State would have done the deal if Memphis takes out their first rounder and still gets 2 first-round picks back. I'm sure they still would have, but for the sake of conversation, if Golden State took out this year's first and Memphis took out next year's first, would you guys feel like it was even like close to an even trade, or even then is it still just so far apart on value?
It's the curse. It's the Durant curse.
I mean, if take the Memphis first out, in my opinion, it would be a little bit more fair. At least gives Andre a sense of direction that, okay, I can go free rebuild. I have my own picks. I control my own destiny. Now I can build on it with the cap space and, young guys.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that trade would have gone through. They would have been fine with the trade if they just took out 1 first-round pick from each side. And I don't think there's any reason why Andre needed to give up his first. But I wasn't on the inside of that deal, so who knows? Maybe Golden State really dug in the
Golden
sand.
State doesn't have their first next year, so they had Memphis wanted a first-round pick back
because they traded it in the last deal. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so they sent it to me. So if Andre wanted a first-round pick, and the only way they were able to get a first-round pick is by sending out their own. Yep. But in hindsight, Andre should look at the bigger picture and realize probably not a playoff team. Is it worth sending pick 8 for pick 22 this year and pick 16 in 2023? I don't think anyone would normally do that in a draft. So
I forgot about the first they sent out in the last deal. Oh well.
So I think we're forgetting just one thing here. I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying, but one of the things that Andre's been very good at in the past is turning what was a Grizzly franchise that had just a collective of. They didn't have any stars. I mean, they had Middleton later on, but turned a collective of average players playing a system and playing, good ball to get a good win percentage. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's the route he goes down again now. He's tried a star, didn't work. He's going back to what he knows. So I would certainly not be surprised if Memphis managed to turn this around a lot quicker than we're all anticipating here.
Yeah, I mean, they've done a good job in the past of succeeding with a team sort of like the one they have now, but we'll see. I don't know about this particular group of players. To finish up for me, my losers, because I'm just gonna go a completely different route than the three of you guys. These are not my biggest losers, but my losers are collectively Cleveland, Atlanta, and the Clippers. All three of them gave up future first-round picks that didn't make any sense, in my opinion. Obviously, Atlanta, no reason why they should have given up that future first. Clippers didn't need to give up that one for Booker. And Cleveland, like I said, from personal experience, I can tell you how much it's gonna suck for him when in a couple of years he's desperate to get a rotation player to keep that team alive and can't because he doesn't have his first round pick. It hurts a lot more than you expect as a end of the draft type team to not have that pick, even though it might be pick 24. Sometimes you still just need that little extra talent, and there's no other way to get it. So I'm worried Cleveland's really going to regret that one, especially because I don't think them adding Spanulis moved the needle at all for them. Yeah. Final note. Do any of you guys see Golden State or Toronto being legitimate championship contenders this year? Over Detroit, over Sacramento, over Phoenix, over Dallas?
No, I don't.
Gary?
I would say that the Warriors have a chance, but the West is very tough. But I'll say that one of the guys that can be contending. As for the Raptors, it depends because they were doing so well, but then Cousins is a guy that's been known as not like a really winner. So I don't know how Chile will utilize him. But then again, Chile's pretty good at maximizing his guys, so maybe Cousins will continue to put up good numbers for them. So, but I say the Raptors are not a contender in my opinion, unless Cousins goes off for them.
Also, I realized before I go to Chris here that I should have mentioned Chris' team in that list, considering they have the third best record in the league and are still undefeated at home. Chris, do you see any of those teams entering the conversation for CSL champions?
No, not at the moment. I mean, I think with Golden State, I have it in the back of my head that I don't think they're going to necessarily be done with their trades and done with their moves yet. That'll take some time to bed out. So towards the deadline, I probably expect them to make some more moves. No doubt Brett will be dropping some of his famous Brett bombs to announce any of those. In terms of the Raptors, I don't think this makes them any better. If Drummond was healthy, they would never make this move. So they probably don't get any closer to the Pistons, but in a game, in a playoff series, they've got an experienced general manager who's been there, not necessarily got over the hump, but maybe he might find the right strategy to get around them this time. So they're going to be the closest of the two.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your time. From the non-playoff team of the four of us to you three playoff teams. Best of luck moving forward, especially Portland and Dallas with your new contender you've got to deal with. And good luck to all of you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
Yeah, hey, by the way, PSA, if anybody wants to trade me a star for cheap, let me know. I'm down.
I've got a Monte Morris for you.